Asperger Syndrome: Signs, Symptoms, and Solutions. Written by Tricia Burton. Narrated by Lisa S. Ware. Copyright 2018. All rights reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced in any form or by any means without permission in writing from the publisher, Shelby Peterson. If you like my book, please leave a review on Amazon. I would appreciate it a lot. Thanks. Introduction. We make an instant judgment when we meet a new person based on their appearance. What kind of clothes they are wearing, facial expressions, body language, voice, tone, and behavior. Everything plays a role in creating their personality's image in our mind, and then we respond accordingly. We have some people around us who may be different from what we are used to, like those with Asperger syndrome, who find it difficult to pick up the subtle little signs of social acceptance. This makes it difficult for them to interact and communicate with others. Difficulty in connecting with other people can lead to severe confusion, further leading to depression and anxiety. Lack of awareness and understanding in common people about Asperger's creates a lot of problems for people who have Asperger's syndrome. People with Asperger's syndrome lack social understanding, and they find it difficult to carry out a reciprocal conversation. In this case, if others will help them cope with awkward situations by understanding this issue, it will help prevent them from getting into a depression. People with Asperger's syndrome have a passionate interest in a specific field. The simplest way to describe a person with Asperger's syndrome is to describe them as a person who observes and understands society, people, and the world around them differently than other people. We have gained much understanding in recent years regarding children and adults with Asperger's syndrome, but it is very important for our future to spread knowledge, change our attitudes, and help people with Asperger's syndrome to fight their challenges. Children with Asperger's need extra care and support. On the other hand, it is needed to provide facilities for adults having Asperger's to get better employment opportunities matching their skills and abilities. These amazing human beings have a lot to offer if they are provided with better opportunities. People with Asperger's syndrome don't have a defective or negative way of thinking, they just think differently than others. They have a different set of priorities as compared to other people. These people have some very strong and positive traits that make them seek truth, knowledge, and perfection. Their sensory experiences and perceptions also tend to differ. Unlike others, their main goal is to solve a problem to attain perfection, instead of taking care of social needs of others. They are more productive than cooperative. Instead of seeing the big picture, they tend to see smaller details. Attention to small details can be seen as a strength or a weakness, but as a strength, they get to see errors that are ignored by others. Just a little bit of support and appreciation from people around them can make a huge difference for the people with Asperger's syndrome. Getting more and more knowledge about Asperger, learning new strategies to fight these difficulties, and then utilizing this knowledge for helping them can bring a great change. Yet, not everyone with Asperger needs help, and most of them are capable enough of fighting their own battles. Asperger's syndrome is generally a hidden disability, which means you can't tell if the person has Asperger's syndrome or not. In most cases, their outward appearance looks just like other people. People with Asperger's syndrome face major problems dealing with so-called normal lifestyle. Their rigid approach and to somewhat extent inflexible nature makes it very difficult for them to understand their social surroundings well. However, despite of all these difficulties, many people with Asperger's are free thinkers, and some of them have proved to be highly skilled and people with amazing talents. With the increasing level of awareness about Asperger's, hopefully in the coming years, attitude towards people having Asperger's syndrome will change drastically, and this will further help in boosting their self-esteem. This book is also a small effort to spread more awareness about Asperger's by distributing the latest information which has been obtained on Asperger syndrome to change the attitudes. Chapter 1. Background. The Asperger syndrome, with its unusual profile of abilities that are recently discovered by medical specialists, might have been part of the human species from the very beginning of time. These humans with unique characteristics have probably played an important and valuable role throughout history. However, until the late 20th century, we had not distinguished their unique abilities and had not specifically described people having such characteristics. In 1944, an Austrian pediatrician known as Dr. Hans Asperger used this diagnostic term of Asperger's syndrome for describing children showing some unique personality traits. He identified that some of the children referred to him showed similar patterns of certain qualities and personality characteristics. Leo Kanner's paper on autism was published in 1943, and Hans Asperger's paper was published right after it, 1 year after Leo Kanner's paper. Hans Asperger's paper provided grounds for the diagnostic of the Asperger syndrome. Both papers were somewhat similar in findings, but in spite of the fact that both Kanner and Asperger were trained in medicine in Vienna, apparently both were not aware of each other's work. Kanner moved to the USA, but Asperger stayed in Europe. As Asperger's paper was in German and its translation was not commonly available, he stayed relatively unknown. Asperger's paper explained some children and adults who lack communication skills and cannot understand social norms well. This group of people had fixed interests and very rigid manners. Moreover, they loved sticking to the routine and hated change, and most of them were physically clumsy. The major difference from Kanner's findings was that children described by Asperger showed no delayed learning abilities in general. Unlike the children described by Kanner, the children in Asperger's paper generally had no significant delays in early cognitive or language development. Because the major characteristic of people related to Asperger's syndrome was lack of empathy, Asperger named this condition autistic psychopathy. Later, Gerhard. Chapter 2. What is Asperger's? Commonly, Asperger's is known by the following names: Asperger syndrome, AS, advanced autism, high-functioning autism. Asperger syndrome is a particular kind of pervasive developmental disorder, PDD, that comes under the autistic spectrum. Asperger's syndrome basically is the mildest to highest functioning stages of the disorder called pervasive development disorder, or PDD, which also appears in the autistic spectrum. Like all other disorders of that spectrum, Asperger's is also a disorder based on neurological issues related to the development, and most often its cause is unknown. In this disorder, there is a divergence from normal patterns or irregularity, especially in three aspects of development. Firstly, people with this disorder find it hard to relate to social norms. Secondly, they lack social skills, and for communication purposes, their use of words and language is limited to some distinctive personality and stylistic traits that include monotonous or protective features. The third characteristic is that their range of interests is very limited and they don't like to change it. It is the existence of these three characteristics that range from mild to severe throughout the pervasive development disorder spectrum. The severity and existence of these features help in distinguishing between Asperger's and autism. Although these dimensions are helpful in understanding PDD along the spectrum and distinguishing Asperger's from autism, yet it is not clear that either Asperger's is just a milder form of autism or these two disorders have mere similarities liked by any broader conditions. One essential requirement of Asperger syndrome, in particular as compared to overall development, is slower or abnormal nonverbal communication skills. This requirement is essential for all the autistic spectrum disorders in general. If any person has difficulty in verbal communication, then problems in social dealings cannot be avoided. Nonverbal communication disorders present in other disorders like schizophrenia can also create problems, but they are different from Asperger's. Communication disorder in Asperger's is present throughout life and creates self esteem issues. Chapter 3. Is it different from autism? There has been a continuing debate in the past, since a few decades ago, about whether or not Asperger's syndrome is an associated form of autism or if it is a completely separate disorder from autism. A lot of publications have attempted to explain the difference between autism and Asperger's with several standards to measure them. Even though Connor and Asperger first presented their original cases and saw clear differences, now there are some diagnostic confusions. This confusion is especially due to several case studies conducted later that have not necessarily used that criterion which was recommended by Asperger. This confusion is particularly visible in areas pertaining to the early development of learning, language, and motor skills. Asperger's syndrome is no longer treated as a separate disorder and is not diagnosed on its own. It is considered a subcategory of a broader class named autism spectrum disorder. Although some people and practitioners still use this term, it is part of the autism group because these related mental health issues have some symptoms in common. Asperger's is actually a high functioning condition in the autism spectrum disorder. It means that people having Asperger's are functioning better than the other types of ASD. In other words, Asperger's symptoms are not as severe, and that's the thing that distinguishes this disorder from autism. Another major difference is that Asperger's doesn't cause language delay. One of the major differences between autism and Asperger's syndrome is related to diagnostic age. In young children, Asperger's syndrome is diagnosed later as compared to autism. Although Asperger has described in his original paper that children with Asperger's syndrome start having difficulties by the age of 2, but in reality, Asperger's cases usually are diagnosed a bit later. Children with autism, however, start to show behavioral problems particularly, and their parents can figure out problems with language development by the age of 18 months to several years of age. This is contrasted with children with Asperger's syndrome, who mostly do not have any kind of language problem or delayed developmental problems, so it is difficult to diagnose this disorder at a very early age. There are a few signs, but people usually do not consider them. Parents typically begin to worry about child's odd and unusual behavior from usually 3 to 4 years of age. Asperger's syndrome is usually diagnosed when a child is in preschool or has started a play group and any other social participation activity. Perhaps the problem starts when a child has to engage in social interaction with other children. The child's behavioral problems become more noticeable when he/she is in an ordered social setting. So, simply put, in autism, language problems and learning difficulties are from significant to severe. On the other hand, in Asperger's syndrome, language problems and learning difficulties are usually less severe, with the exceptions being prevalent enough to mention them, of course. Children with autism are usually good with motor skills, but children with Asperger's are not. Chapter 4. Some facts about Asperger's. Here are some quick facts about Asperger's. Asperger's is a lifelong disorder, and it affects about 2 to 36 in every 10,000 people. It occurs more often in boys than girls. Boys have 4 times more Asperger's syndrome as compared to girls. Persons with Asperger's syndrome have, in general, normal intellectual abilities. In people with autistic disorders, approximately 20% of the people have an IQ level in the normal range, and they are also referred to as high functioning. Chapter 5. Common traits of people with Asperger's syndrome. The traits of people with Asperger's syndrome can be grouped in three different areas as the flexibility of thoughts, interaction, and communication. People with Asperger's are very honest, sometimes too much. They are famous for speaking their mind. They may like solitude, but can prove to be an extremely loyal friend. Along with these traits, a high level of sensory and anxiety issues are also seen in people with Asperger syndrome. However, it is not all negative because people with AS also have some very positive qualities like reliability, honesty, and attentiveness. They are also detail oriented people and often known as perfectionists. In fact, this unique blend of positive and negative traits in different people provides the world diverse personalities and services. Social interactions. Most of those who have Asperger's syndrome find social interactions very difficult. Some of the people with this disorder prefer to stay alone and avoid social interactions, while others may like to build relationships and want to socialize, but they find the rules of social interactions difficult to understand. In society, we have some unwritten rules to stay appropriate, but people with AS find it confusing and make mistakes. Behaving according to certain rules and scenarios makes things difficult for them. Consequently, social interactions can be stressful and an awkward experience for them. This directly damages their self-esteem, and that's why most of them avoid social gatherings in large groups. People with Asperger's may find it difficult to make direct eye contact with others and find a sense of closeness to others hard to handle. Communication. Unlike people with autism, people with Asperger's syndrome don't have any difficulty in learning the language in childhood. Still, they are not well aware of the art of using the words properly. They find it difficult to understand in what situation which word will be more suitable. That's the reason phrases, sarcasms, and sayings can be difficult to understand for them. In phrases and sarcasm, what is usually said is different from its actual meaning, and they find it confusing. For instance, if you bump your head into something and your friend says, "Well done," now, he isn't congratulating you actually, but it will create confusion for people with AS. In the same way, they may learn some words or phrases that they actually don't understand well, and then they will use them in the wrong context. In fact, in the original paper of Asperger, he called children with Asperger's little professors. These little geniuses have quite the refined vocabulary as compared to their peers. The only problem they face is that they find it difficult to understand figurative language and normally use words for their literal meanings. They particularly face a problem in understanding non-literal parts of languages. For instance, they have a problem in understanding humor, irony, and phrases. They may understand the humor, but they can't get the real essence to share it with others. Still, there are several reports with evidence that people with AS may have a sound appreciation for humor, and the one I personally know has that indeed. For people with Asperger's syndrome, expressing feelings in proper words can be really difficult, and sometimes when they can't express them, they get frustrated. Flexibility of thought. Another problem that these people have to face is to deal with the irregular character or mood swings of the other people around them. It can be extremely difficult for someone with Asperger's. They actually like routine, and changing routines, behaviors, or circumstances can be really upsetting for them. Unplanned changes and spontaneous surprises can cause trouble because they have to deal with a lot of preparation and stress. They also have quite rigid opinions and thoughts that form their lives. Usually, they also lack empathy, which was a major characteristic that Asperger mentioned. Even though they have a lot of difficulties handling issues that arise from the inflexibility of thoughts, yet this trait can be positive as well. They can focus on a specific field more than any other person and can gain amazing results. See it as a constant laser focus with the inability to shut off. Some people with Asperger's and a special interest have become masters in the field of their interest. Some people with Asperger's will find they have an outstanding memory for extremely precise details, and they can keep their attention focused on something for a longer time. Anxiety. People with Asperger's syndrome usually have a higher level of anxiety than other people without this disorder. There are some things that can be normal for other people, like meeting any new person, doing any work on a specific time, etc. But for people suffering from Asperger's syndrome, these things can create a lot of stress. If something goes wrong or something happens that is unexpected, they find it too much to handle. In such situations, they reach their breaking point and can face a lot of anxiety. Chapter 6. Characteristics. There are a number of characteristics linked with people that have Asperger's syndrome, which are mentioned below. Improper, awkward, or minimal social relations. People with Asperger's find it difficult to form new relationships. They can't understand the subtle social rules and gestures of other people. They are often too literal in their language. What they say is actually what they mean, and they take literal meanings of what anyone else says. That's why they tend to face difficulties in understanding phrases and sarcasm. Moreover, sometimes they learn words without knowing their meaning and can use words that are relatively odd or do not fit into the context. They love it when they are admired for anything, and being first is what they want. Imperfections and criticism are very difficult for them to handle. They lack common sense. Sometimes they have issues with learning math, writing, and reading abilities. They often have a problem in dealing with complex topics. Their verbal cognitive talents are average to above average, while nonverbal talents are average to below average. Their accent may differ. They can be too loud or too formal, or their tone can be completely expressionless. In conversations, they are most often self-centered. They tend to ignore others' feelings and talk about topics of their own interest without considering that it might make others bored. Their speaking style is usually kind of robotic or scripted. They love to stick to the routine things and like controlled environment. Unexpected changes can make them feel depressed. They find it difficult to involve themselves in new activities, and that's why they prefer to do regular activities. Their interests are pretty narrow, and mostly they are obsessed with few subjects of their core interest. Most often, these interests are related to transport, computers, geeky things, drawing, maps, historical animals, etc. The majority of them lack empathy. They are usually honest, very reliable, and dedicated to their subject of self-interest. These are also their strongest abilities that make them especially capable of achieving great things. Clumsiness can be seen in more than 60% of the children having Asperger's syndrome. Several studies have shown that awkward expressions and clumsiness in movement actually can be seen in nearly all the kids with Asperger's syndrome, but in some cases, it is not as significant. Children with Asperger's normally run in an immature manner, but as they grow up, their body movements get better. Still, adults with Asperger's sometimes may have a gait that lacks fluency. Children with Asperger's also have difficulty in catching, throwing, or kicking a ball properly. People having Asperger's syndrome are usually prone to depression. Almost every one person with Asperger's in 3 will have some kind of depression. They are often overwhelmed when the love or affection is expressed with high intensity. It may make them behave awkward or shy. They like brief and light expressions of affection. In fact, this kind of affection makes them feel loved and helps with their depression. Chapter 7: Causes. The real cause of Asperger's syndrome has not yet been identified. Contemporary research advocates that a propensity toward the condition of Asperger's may run in families. Research also suggests that people having Asperger's syndrome are also at high risk for other problems like attention deficit disorder, schizophrenia, depression, and obsessive compulsive disorder. Although these problems are most often present in people with Asperger's, still, Asperger's is not caused by any of these psychiatric problems. The precise reason for Asperger's syndrome is still being inspected. Nevertheless, some research does suggest that there are a few factors like genetic and environmental that actually may become a reason for the transformation in brain development. Moreover, it has been proved that a person with Asperger's syndrome is not responsible for this disorder, and this condition is out of his or her own control. Asperger's is not the fault of either a person's upbringing or any other social circumstances. Nobody should be blamed for being the reason for this condition. However, research shows that genetic factors play a major role and might be the main cause of Asperger's syndrome. If we talk about the original paper and research conducted by Asperger, then the same evidence can be seen there. Asperger himself distinguished that in cases where he studied the close family members of the AS person, he found similar qualities to some extent. Mostly, these similarities were found in parents and other close family members. Later studies showed that these autistic traits and similar behaviors are also present in close relatives of people having Asperger's syndrome. Hans Asperger explained in his original study that similar symptoms of Asperger's patients were also present in other family members, especially in fathers. This provides evidence that Asperger's syndrome has some connection with genetic factors. Later studies also proved these findings and supported this observation of Hans Asperger. Although it is very evident that genetic factors play a vital role in Asperger's syndrome, still, not any specific gene has yet been identified that can be blamed for causing a problem. It is believed that multiple factors play a role in the appearance of all the autistic disorders. This means that some of the members have already had problems with learning new things, language, and having social interaction, but these traits are so subtle to other members that they are often overlooked. Most of the research related to behavioral genetics shows that all the disorders related to autism have common genetic mechanisms. However, it is believed that Asperger's genetic mechanism is much stronger than autism. Recent studies show that probably some specific alleles are responsible for making people vulnerable to Asperger's. If that's the case, then particular combinations of these alleles will also be responsible for the severity of the disorder. A few of the Asperger's cases have also been associated with teratogens. This is the agent that causes birth defects if the fetus has exposure to it in the first 2 months of pregnancy. There is strong evidence that most of the Asperger's cases have developed this disorder in early developmental stages, but there is still a possibility that ASD can start at later stages. By researchers, many of the environmental factors have also been tested, but no significant result is yet available or has been confirmed by investigators. Chapter 8: Symptoms. In children with Asperger's, it can be a bit tricky to diagnose the disorder. They often have good cognitive skills, and their vocabulary is quite strong. Although they find it difficult to use words properly, their language skills are good. To an untrained person, a child having Asperger's syndrome might just seem like a normal kid with a different behavior or interest. The symptoms of Asperger's syndrome are different in children, teenagers, and adults. Thus, we will classify them into 3 categories for further explanation. It has mostly been seen in children ages 3 to 5. Parents often notice some abnormality when the kid starts nursery or when they interact with other children. Children with Asperger's syndrome may show the following symptoms. Symptoms during childhood. Children with Asperger's have a very formal style of talking that can be totally unlike their age. They may use very formal and hard words for speech as compared to other children of their age. They talk a lot, but most of their talks are only about their own favorite subjects. They don't care about others' interests. That's why they are often found engaged in one-sided conversations. They tend to verbalize their inner thoughts while conversing with others. They don't like to make eye contact, and most often stare at other things while talking. Their facial expressions and body posture are most often a bit odd or awkward. They may find difficulty in understanding social cues and may be inefficient at social skills. Reading other person's body language, conversing with their peers, and following social rules can be hard for these children. These kids dislike doing anything that is not in their routine. They want to stick to their routine. Most of them seem to lack empathy. They are not able to understand subtle differences in speech tones and styles. This thing makes it tricky for them to pick up differences in pitch and accents of tones and understand others properly. They take everything too literally and may have trouble with comprehending jokes or sarcastic comments. Not only this, they themselves have a very flat tone of speech that is without any expression. Some of them may have heightened sensitivity. They get annoyed by extreme noises, lights, etc. They have a very limited set of interests, and they often obsess with these interests. Most of the children with Asperger's have very unusual subjects of interest, like they may like detailed drawing, designing, math, astronomy, etc. They may like certain topics with obsession. For instance, they may find dinosaurs very interesting and keep reading about them, or they may want to know names of all the stars. They are not good at motor skills and may have delayed development. They may find difficulty in properly walking or writing. Catching a ball, riding a bike, eating for themselves, and holding things can be a little tricky for them. Symptoms during adolescent and teen years. Most of these symptoms, which children with Asperger's have, continue in later years. Most of the children, when they get a bit older, start to learn the skills that they lack. It is possible that they learn social skills, but communication often remains a problem for them. They continuously have difficulty in reading other behaviors and expressions. Just like other teenagers, in adolescence, a person with Asperger's also wants friends. They feel timid and nervous when approaching others and have difficulty in making friends. That's because kids with Asperger's are aware of the fact that they are different from others, and this makes them shy. Most teenagers try to look good in this age, but teens with Asperger's find it tiresome to put efforts to fit in with others. Moreover, they can be a little naive, immature, and too trusting that other teens don't find them cool enough to be friends. This scenario often leads these beautiful souls to being bullied or teased. That can become a reason for a stressful teenage life. Symptoms in adulthood. Asperger's syndrome is a lasting disorder. It stays with the person throughout life. Over time, it can be a little stabilized and things get a little better for the person with Asperger's syndrome, but it still stays there. Adults with Asperger's usually have a very good knowledge of their own strengths and weaknesses. They try and learn social skills and are the part of society like a normal person. Most of the people with Asperger's syndrome marry and have children. They prove themselves to be very talented human beings and get great success. Some guys I know in their late teens felt awkward dating, So we made them a business card that has a picture of Disney's Dory and reads, "I have short-term memory loss. If I forget your name, don't take it personally. If I stare, it's just because you're good-looking. Make sure to give me a call. Here's my number. If I don't answer the phone, it's just because too many girls are calling me at the same time." They loved it, and they handed them out like crazy. Of course, some girls thought it was stupid, but they actually got some dates from it with girls who thought it was funny. Some of the traits associated with Asperger syndrome, like the attention to details and obsession or interest in certain subjects, lead them to great success. Because of these traits, they have chances of doing well in university and gaining success in their careers. Many people with Asperger's show great interest in technology and choose the programming or engineering field as their career. This is the reason that you can find many great historical figures that had the same disorder in their lives. Albert Einstein, Thomas Jefferson, Marie Curie, and Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart are great examples of such respected historical figures having Asperger's syndrome. Chapter 9. Treatments. There is a broad range of supportive treatments for Asperger's syndrome that assist them, and a person having this disorder can be trained in getting better social skills and sending out better communication signals. These treatments help them to be capable of interacting more naturally in society. At present, like many of the other mental problems, there is no actual and effective cure for Asperger's syndrome. Still, by paying more attention to learning ways to manage the problems, lowering the symptoms, and getting better at social cues, most persons with Asperger's syndrome live quite a normal life. They have strong connections with close friends and loved ones. With all the positive things associated with Asperger's, there are some negatives as well. They find it difficult to express and manage emotions, and this leads them to depression and severe anxiety. To help them out with these problems, there are, fortunately, many psychological therapies and treatments. Psychosocial interventions for Asperger's. The best treatment for Asperger's synchronizes therapies that deal with the three main symptoms of the disorder. These symptoms are lack of communication skills, obsessions with repetitive routines, and awkward body movements. No single treatment package is available for all the children with Asperger syndrome, but most professionals have the same opinion that the earlier you will start to address the issue, the better. A useful management program is that which is structured on the child's interests. A good treatment program offers a predictable timetable, tries to teach people with simple steps, vigorously connects the child's concentration in extremely planned activities, and offers frequent strengthening of behavior. It may comprise social skills guidance, therapy related to cognitive behaviors, medicine for other conditions, and methods that can be beneficial. These therapies may include psychotherapies to help the individual with Asperger's to learn better social skills and dealing with emotions associated with the disorder. Educating parents about the disorder and how they can help their kid. Therapies to improve behavior. Training to teach social skills. Intervention for proper education. Psychiatric medications. For hyperactivity, lack of concentration, and impulsivity, psychostimulants, clonidine, tricyclic antidepressants, Strattera. For bad temper and violence, mood stabilizers, beta blockers, clonidine, naltrexone, neuroleptics. For obsessions, anxiety, rituals, and pressures, SSRIs, tricyclic antidepressants. For anxiety, SSRIs, tricyclic antidepressants. With useful treatment, people with Asperger's syndrome can be trained to manage their disabilities with success, but they may still come across social circumstances and individual problems that can be challenging. Most of the adults with Asperger syndrome are able to work effectively in conventional jobs, even though they may persist to need support and moral encouragement from others to uphold a self regulating lifestyle. Although medications can help in controlling Asperger's, still, care must be taken while taking medications. Drugs are normally tested on people excluding people from ASD, which means side effects associated with ASD are usually not known. Thus, harmful effects of medications can be more common for people with Asperger's. Chapter 10: Strengths of People Having Asperger's. Along with some negative traits, there are also some very positive traits that are connected to Asperger's. Adults with Asperger's follow thoughts they have faith in without caring about others' opinion. They are not easily influenced by others' attitudes. They don't like to give up just because someone tries to encourage them to do so. They are more often than not faithful and trustworthy. For them, getting ahead of others is not as important as solving problems and facing challenges. Carefulness, authenticity, and attachment to responsibility matter more than a goal, particularly if that objective would make others suffer. They are good at distinguishing patterns and in categorizing things. They are rule followers. They feel comfortable with organized things, accuracy, and classification. These traits make it easy for them to follow subsequent rules, assigning resources and resolving issues. They are very truthful, optimistic, and real, which makes them faithful and trustworthy friends. They are often straightforward, say whatever comes to their mind, and are truthful. Most of them have a strong belief in social justice. They are not afraid of being alone. In fact, they like it. That's the reason they are often eager to employ in private work that others stay away from. This puts them in the situation of making marvelous offerings at work and school. They are able to understand numerous levels of meanings of words and thoughts. They can make connections in words that others fail to spot. They are determined, and when they make their mind to do anything or make a promise, they can be trusted blindly. People with Asperger syndrome love to speak their mind without getting worried about others' opinion. They are much more concerned about someone's abilities and proficiency than other people's opinion about that person. Adults with Asperger's are particularly good at memorizing and recalling information. They are good at that job which requires expertise in facts, details, and remembrance. They are often outstanding at remembering details that are often overlooked by others. They have an obsession with gathering data and tagging information on a subject that they find interesting. Their senses are very sharp, and this extreme sensitivity gives them a unique opportunity to view the world from a different perspective. They have very specific sensory experiences through the sensitivity to touch, smell, and vision. Another trait is that they are very trusting. This is the same trait that makes them vulnerable to others. They are sympathetic and considerate, and many uphold the conviction that the positive relationships are possible. A relationship with someone having Asperger syndrome can be amazing because they are free from prejudice and favoritism based on race, age, gender, or any other difference. They are not interested in being bullies or social manipulators. Chapter 11: Problems Faced by People with Asperger Syndrome. Even though people with Asperger syndrome lead a normal life and want to be sociable just like others, their different personality traits can sometimes lead them to appear detached. Some phrases, like hold your horses or caught red-handed, might be taken very factually by someone having Asperger syndrome, while other people would understand that it's just a symbolic figure of speech. They might also find it hard to visualize the results of their deeds or how their deeds can actually affect others. They sometimes don't know how people will react to their actions, and these things can actually cause a lot of misunderstandings, leading to anxiety. Some other problems are as follows. Someone with Asperger's might think that other people can't help him or her with problems. They will struggle by themselves until they will reach the limit of their tolerance level, but never ask for help. This is also a sign of having a tough nature, but it may lead to anxiety. School-going children with Asperger's often find the environment very unpredictable and hard to handle, which causes a lot of stress. Violent behavior can be activated by their hypersensitivity to certain things. They can be triggered by anything which others might not notice, like flickering lights, loud sounds, or repetitive actions. Children can also use violent behavior to avoid anything they don't want to do. On the other hand, aggression can be used to gain attention. This will lead to high aggression to a number of things that do not match their nature. They also can have a low level of tolerance. They may not like when someone touches them. Now, for others, this is a normal thing, but people with Asperger's can show a very strong reaction to being touched if they don't like it. The young person with Asperger syndrome may have trouble in foreseeing future proceedings. If he wants something now, he can't understand that he can get it later. For him, if he doesn't get it, he will never get it. This can cause him to show a severe reaction and have a tantrum. These kids often get bullied at school for their different behavior. If they get teased or bullied, they can show strong, violent behavior and lash out in their defense. They find it difficult to handle this pressure, especially if they do not have any close friends. Chapter 12. How to work with them. In reality, Asperger's is not a disease. It's just a mental condition. And though you can cure a disease, you cannot cure a person's nature. Still, there are measures that can be taken to improve the condition of a person having Asperger's. You cannot fully cure it, but medications and therapies can help in reducing the effects of negative aspects and support positive attributes. If proper guidance is provided, over time a person can become more comfortable by learning from experiences. Their sensitivities to different things may reduce over time, and they can become more able to manage their stress and anxiety. With Asperger's, not all is black. They do have some very strong and positive attributes. With time, they may learn to use their strengths and interests to their advantage and can find an environment where they are supported, accepted, and appreciated for their strengths. Through love, respect, and support, people having Asperger syndrome can achieve a significant place in life. The great way to work with them is to educate yourself about their problems. The more you will know about them, the more you will understand their behavior, and better you will be able to deal with them. There are a few things that one should always remember while dealing with them. Stay calm and composed with them. If they show any violent or reserved behavior, remember that they are trying to share their feelings with you. Don't assume that they are misbehaving and don't like you. If they are having behavioral difficulties, then their stress level should always be reviewed before reaching any conclusion. Behavioral difficulties and stress are closely linked. Strengthen yourself by tolerating some behavioral issues. Try to help them by giving planned and clear routine to decrease their stress level. Try to tell them clearly the consequences of their violent behavior before it occurs. Find out some activities of their interest and let them indulge in them. Give them some new activities by simplifying those things they find difficult. They can also show problematic behavior out of boredom, so if tasks are too easy, Try to make them challenging for engaging them. Along with these things, there are also a few steps that parents may take to help out their kids with Asperger syndrome. Asperger's children find it difficult to socialize. Parents should try to teach them some practical skills to blend into the social gatherings. Some introductory conversations can be helpful in this regard. Parents can practice conversational tactics with their children to teach them better. You can learn so much by just watching a thing repetitively. Parents should encourage their children to watch other kids while playing and doing other things. This way, they will learn how other kids behave with one another and learn. Some adults with Asperger's have reported that they have learned social skills by watching other people. Kids learn more from other kids than adults. If they will be encouraged to play with other kids, spend some social time, and watch others, they will surely learn new things and get better in social skills. The other great method is to tell social short stories. Parents can create short stories based on everyday situations and can tell their kids on a daily basis. This is a great way to explain social cues and proper responses to any unexpected situations. These stories can be just a few simple lines of explanation of some scenarios. Like, you can explain how kids greet each other when they meet, how you hand over something to someone, etc. Asperger's children often resist making eye contact. Parents can teach their kids having Asperger syndrome how to make eye contact and practice this at home with them. If a kid is being good with someone or showing very appropriate social behavior with others, then always encourage and identify their good behaviors. Try to say complimenting things to let them know that they have shown a good social skill. Tell them about your feelings and thoughts. Regularly engage them in sharing feelings about different situations. Start this by sharing your own feelings and how you felt about something. This will encourage them to think more deeply and share their feelings with others. As we know, these kids are very literal in their speech. Try to educate them about different phrases and their meanings. Try to use different phrases and tell them their actual meaning. They will find it very interesting, and this will save them from future confusions. Teach them a safety phrase to use when they are in the confused state. This will help them fight the anxiety that occurs when they find any situation confusing. Try to teach them that it's okay if they don't understand anything, and they can simply tell that they don't understand it.
ADHD. Why ADHD can be a benefit and how to focus better. Written by Christy Jeffers. Narrated by Eric Boozer. What is ADHD? An ADHD definition. Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, or more commonly known as ADHD, is a common behavioral disorder that is seen and diagnosed in children. It not only affects children, but it can also be present in any age, including adults. ADHD is described by psychiatrists as a neurobehavioral development disorder. The cause of ADHD is still unknown. However, experts have shown possible causes of its occurrence. The cause of ADHD can be related to hereditary disposition, as most children diagnosed with ADHD often have family history of ADHD. Another cause that experts consider is the exposure of children to lead content. Most children who are diagnosed with ADHD have seen to have an elevated amount of lead in the body. Early head trauma, exposure of mother to cigarette during pregnancy, premature delivery, and complications at birth are also considered to be some causes of ADHD. The structure of the brain and brain chemicals is also considered to be the cause of ADHD. An alteration in the production of dopamine and norepinephrine is involved in the change of behavior of the children with ADHD. These two neurotransmitters are responsible in regulating the mood and activity of every individual. Changes in the level of these neurotransmitters will cause changes in the behavior. The main symptoms of ADHD include hyperactivity, inattention, and impulsiveness. These symptoms are highly observable in children with ADHD. ADHD is categorized into 3 subtypes. It is categorized according to the symptoms it manifests. Predominantly inactive type, when a particular individual has poor attention span, lack of focus, and has trouble in completing tasks, he or she has this subtype. Following instructions, even the simple ones, are very difficult for them. Predominantly hyperactive impulsive type. In this subtype, there is an increased level of energy, and the individual will have difficulty in sitting still, always in motion. Children may have excessive activities such as persistent jumping, running all around the room, or climbing on the furniture. They are fond of interrupting other individuals and speak inappropriately. They cannot wait for their turn, and following instructions is hard to do. Individuals who belong in this category may be prone to injury, so safety should be included as one of the priorities. Combined type. This is the last type wherein all of the symptoms of ADHD are manifested and all are dominant. The diagnosis of ADHD is not done through blood testing, urine test, or physical checkup. The diagnosis of ADHD can be done by ADHD experts, usually pediatricians, psychologists, or psychiatrists. There are specific interviews and tests that the child may undergo, and only ADHD experts can do the evaluation and diagnosis. ADHD can start in early childhood, but it is often observed in children when they enter school or when they reach the age of 7. ADHD is a disorder that cannot be cured, and it can remain present into adulthood. However, the hyperactivity symptoms will likely decrease. What are ADHD symptoms? ADHD symptoms are categorized in 3 basic areas. Hyperactivity. These kids are described as bouncing off the walls, always on the go, restless, and can't sit still. They leave their seat without permission, walk around the room at inappropriate times, move constantly, tapping, humming, leg swinging, fidgeting, squirming, etc., and disturb other children. Inattention and distractibility. Children who are inattentive and distractible actually attend to everything and therefore appear to be attending to nothing. These are the kiddies who don't pay attention, are easily distracted and off task, forget things learned, have difficulty following instructions, fail to finish work, daydream and stare off into space. Impulsivity and overreactivity. Impulsive kids are frequently mislabeled as defiant, disrespectful, or oppositional. These are the kids who can't control their impulses. They act without thinking. They don't stop to think of the consequences of their actions. If a thought comes into their mind, they do it. They can be reckless daredevils, and they can be the kids who 2 minutes ago got into trouble for something, and here they are doing it again. They have difficulty waiting their turn, will interrupt or intrude upon others, and blurt out answers without raising their hands. Children who are overreactive have 2 switches, off and high. They lack middle ground. They have difficulty modulating their feelings. So, they are either happy or enraged. They aren't miffed, ticked off, annoyed, upset, angry, etc. They are furious. Their weak regulatory system creates problems in self-control, be it behavior or emotions. A child can have symptoms in one or all of the categories and still be diagnosed with ADHD. For diagnostic purposes, ADHD is subdivided, RE, with or without hyperactivity. An extremely hyperactive child may be easily diagnosed with ADHD. However, the sweet, quiet little girl who sits at her desk and silently daydreams can be harder to identify as an ADHD child. Point of clarification, ADD is not an official diagnosis. It's just oftentimes a lot easier to say. A child's formal diagnosis is ADHD, regardless of whether or not there is hyperactivity present. 5 daily habits of highly successful people with ADHD. Successful individuals with ADHD establish habits that facilitate their success. These 5 daily habits are not difficult to master, but do not come naturally to those of us with ADHD. It is essential for those of us living with ADHD to learn the habits that will enable our success so that we may realize our full potential. By adopting 5 simple life habits, adults with ADHD will become more productive, easier to live with, and happier. Set goals. Think of what needs to be done. Make a list of high priority, medium priority, and low priority goals. Make a mental note of what the highest priority goals are and periodically remind yourself of what your priorities were for the day. Establish a daily routine. A routine makes it easier for those of us with ADHD to stay on time and to use our time wisely. Make it a daily habit to wake up early, visualize your goals and how they will be accomplished. Make your bed, take 5 minutes and pick up the house clutter, have breakfast, take your vitamins, write a to-do list. Focus your mind talk on productivity. Those of us with ADHD need to harness our mind talk so that it is focused on productivity. Am I on task? Did I get sidetracked? What is my next task? How should I tackle it? Am I being efficient? Can I accomplish this faster by doing it differently? Good work on that small task. Am I remembering the big picture? Don't forget to set the timer. I need to write down that errand I just remembered. Set up rewards for yourself. Those of us with ADHD need to build rewards into our day. Break your tasks down into smaller tasks and build rewards into your day for having accomplished your small and large tasks. Reward yourself by sitting down to view personal emails after a small task. Have a yummy cookie and cappuccino after accomplishing a large task. Be accountable to someone who cheers your success. Tell a family member, spouse, friend, or coach what you aim to accomplish. Tell them, or hopefully they'll know without being told, that you need encouragement and to be held accountable for what you have set out to accomplish. Keep this person posted on your setbacks and accomplishments. Sometimes a loved one or friend can provide valuable guidance on becoming more efficient and effective in your daily life. Setting goals, establishing a daily routine, focusing our mind talk on productivity, rewarding ourselves for our accomplishments, and being accountable to loved ones are 5 habits that are easy enough to master and that are essential to the life success of those of us with ADHD. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder in men. Do guys face different issues? Is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder in men any different when compared to women who have the disorder? Surely ADHD is the same thing regardless of race or gender. From a medical point of view, this may well be the case, but in reality, men often experience different symptoms. The basic hallmarks of this disorder might be the same, but the truth is, men and women have fundamental differences which in essence cause them to behave differently. Interestingly enough, ADD, attention deficit disorder, and ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, affects considerably more boys than it does girls. Not only are males more susceptible to the condition, but the resultant behavior traits are also frequently more problematic. For example, most females who are diagnosed with one of these disorders will suffer mostly from things like inattentiveness and forgetfulness. Males, on the other hand, often experience mood swings, and these mood changes frequently lead to aggressive behavior. Another common difference between attention deficit hyperactivity disorder in men and ADHD in women is that women tend to be considerably more prone to depression. Having said that, when ADHD prescription drugs are being taken, both sexes can become vulnerable to depressive disorders. The most typical ADHD drugs are known as stimulant drugs. They are basically amphetamine-like drugs which have a direct impact on brainwave activity. When people who don't have these disorders take the drugs, they experience a noticeable increase in energy levels. They can also go without sleep for extended periods of time. This is why the illegal use of these drugs has become so prevalent among students who are studying for important exams. People who have ADD or ADHD are, on the other hand, affected differently by these stimulant drugs. They don't experience an energy boost, and they rarely get kept awake by the drugs. Instead, the drugs tend to calm them down, which in turn helps as far as attentiveness and hyperactivity is concerned. Unfortunately, the most commonly prescribed stimulant drugs can also trigger depression. Another potential side effect is an increased risk of suicidal thoughts. This, along with depression, is a deadly combination, which has already led to numerous suicides. Sadly, most of these suicides have involved young children and teenagers. Men with one of these disorders, perhaps even more so than women, need to be extremely mindful of suicidal thoughts. This is especially true if ADHD prescription drugs are being used. Remember, ADHD prescription drugs come with an FDA black box warning for a reason. ADHD parenting: 10 things your child needs for success. All parents of ADHD children are willing to do almost anything to make sure their child does well in life. Aside from finding proper treatments, providing support, and applying ADHD parenting strategies, it's important that you foster these 10 important relationships and connections. Next to a stable family life, these will help your child succeed despite his or her ADHD symptoms. Friends. Children with ADHD don't have an easy time making or keeping friends, so help out your child in the regard. After all, friends can be instrumental in helping your child overcome hurdles or encouraging talents. Teach your child how to behave around friends, encourage play dates, and find opportunities for your child to meet other kids outside of school. Extended family. Encourage your child's relationships with aunts, uncles, grandparents, and cousins. Extended family members are like second parents. You can't always be there for your child, but your relatives can fill in these gaps. School. Grades aren't always the best measurement of success. It's how comfortable, welcome, and nurtured your child feels. Establish relationships with your child's teachers and school staff. Come up with ways to help your child do well at school. The community. Getting your child involved in the community teaches responsibility and provides your child with a sense of belonging and accomplishment. Find opportunities to volunteer and help out in your neighborhood or church. Extracurricular activities. Childhood is the best time for kids to discover their interests and their passions. Encourage your child to dabble in different sports, hobbies, and after-school activities they are interested in. The more activities your child explores, the greater the chances of finding a passion that your child can find happiness in. Extracurricular activities are also a great place for your child to make friends. History. Promote a sense of history by encouraging your child's curiosity about the past. Show old photos and mementos of your family. Pass on stories told by grandparents, and draw out a family tree. Nature. Tree houses and lakes are part of the childhood experience. Take your child to experience the best that nature has to offer. Not only will this give your child memories to treasure forever, but this gives your child the chance to get physical, which is great for managing ADHD. The arts. Painting, playing dress-up, exploring music. Kids with ADHD are very creative. Give them the chance to explore the arts and use these as a healthy form of self-expression. Pets. Pets provide companionship like no other. Provide your child with a pet once he or she is responsible and mature enough to look after one, or expose your child to animals with trips to the zoo or volunteering at an animal shelter. Information and ideas. Encourage your child to keep an open mind to new information and ideas, or expose your child to different perspectives by going on cultural exchange programs. Fear of knowledge is the greatest learning disability. How people with ADHD can take back control of their lives by going the natural route. People with ADHD are statistically proven to struggle to achieve their goals in life. This is due to the lack of ability to concentrate, remember, and focus, which are the main symptoms of ADHD. But there is no reason why these symptoms should hold you back. Now more than ever, it is possible to achieve everything you want in life, even with ADHD, thanks to safe, effective, natural remedies. From children struggling to keep pace with their peers in school as they have trouble concentrating, to adults who have difficulty staying on task, ADHD leaves a trail of frustrated and emotionally exhausted individuals in its wake. Until recent years, the only option for these individuals was prescription medications, which can themselves contribute to the problem with serious side effects. Now, however, people with ADHD have a world of options to help control symptoms and allow them to join fully in their everyday activities. The breakthrough has come with a better understanding of the underlying cause of ADHD, specifically impaired brain function. An imbalance in neurotransmitters prevents the brain of an ADHD patient from sending and receiving messages properly, resulting in an inability to keep focus or remember important information. Natural medications made from a special blend of herbs and other plants, based on ingredients, offer a solution which targets this neurological imbalance and improves brain function. Ingredients such as tuberculinum, hyoscyamus, and arsen iod work to soothe and heal as they help improve clarity and restore proper brain function. Together, they can offer a safe, gentle, and effective solution for people with ADHD, both kids and adults. And because they are 100% natural, they carry no side effects whatsoever, making them safe for all people with ADHD, no matter their age. This is particularly important to parents who are hesitant to subject their children to the potentially harsh side effects of Ritalin and other stimulant-based medications generally prescribed for ADHD treatment. Along with natural remedies, there are other steps which individuals with ADHD can take to ease symptoms and improve their ability to function normally. These include incorporating relaxation techniques into their daily routine, as well as making changes to both dietary and sleep habits, all of which can have a profound effect on brain function. Behavioral therapy can also be quite beneficial for people with ADHD. This is a type of guided therapy which encourages individuals to recognize and control their reactions in certain situations. By taking an active role in changing their own behavior, it is possible to overcome the negative feelings associated with ADHD and regain some sense of empowerment. Dealing with ADHD can seem overwhelming, but there is no reason why it has to be, especially with the various options available for treatment today. If you have been diagnosed with ADHD, consult with your doctor and consider all of your options, and you can find a treatment approach which will work for you. And don't hesitate to include natural remedies in your plan. It may make all the difference when it comes to taking your life back. ADHD treatment options and strategies. There are many and varied ADHD treatment options, ranging from medication to counseling, exercise, coaching, behavior strategies, and support groups. When looking over the various ADHD treatment possibilities, it is important to pick something that will address all of an individual's unique needs. Individuals with ADHD face many challenges and have to deal with many weaknesses. However, those same individuals also host a score of different strengths, skills, and abilities. The goal of ADHD treatment options is to capitalize and maximize the strengths while minimizing the weaknesses to the best degree possible, creating strategies around the challenges to allow the individual to operate autonomously and effectively. Many ADHD treatment options are proving to be extremely effective. As one example, beneficial effects of stimulant medication as an ADHD treatment option can be dramatic, and for some children with ADHD, it enables them to function at a level that is no longer distinguishable from their classmates. This is certainly also possible for adults with ADHD. The majority of individuals who receive stimulant medication do not experience any adverse side effects, and the medication is generally believed to be quite safe for long-term use. When trying to decide on an ADHD treatment program, it is important to differentiate between the primary symptoms of inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity, and the associated secondary problems such as academic struggles, disruptive behavior, social difficulties, and emotional problems such as depressed mood and low self-esteem. A combination of the following ADHD treatment options may prove beneficial. Exercise. Exercise is a natural mood lifter, and recent studies are demonstrating its success in helping to increase and lengthen attention span and the ability to focus. Coaching. An ADHD coach works with their clients to create daily structures and organization while providing support and encouragement to set goals and rewards and keep them focused even when obstacles occur. Creativity. While ADHD presents a number of challenges, capitalize on the strengths. Get creative. Use the ability to multitask to get involved in many and numerous interesting projects. Learn a new instrument, take a dance class, pick up a new hobby. Medication. The most common and effective types of medication used as an ADHD treatment option are stimulants. It is unclear at this time why a stimulant, which speeds up brain activity, is having such positive effects on such symptoms as hyperactivity and impulsivity. However, around 75% of patients are having a successful treatment rate. Behavior strategies and interventions. Behavior modification has been demonstrated to be very effective for many individuals with ADHD. It involves a reward system with clear consequences for behavior, rewards for positive behavior with the goal of increasing them, and consequences for negative ones, which should over time decrease the unwanted behavior. Counseling. Counseling as one of the ADHD treatment options gives the individual the chance to work through some of the frustration that the condition brings, as well as some of its secondary impacts, i.e., difficulty with relationships, poor self-esteem, etc. Support groups. Parents, spouses, or the individual with ADHD might opt to join a support group as one of the ADHD treatment options. Support groups offer strength, education, and encouragement. The opportunity to share with others the struggles and frustrations can be reassuring and uplifting. ADHD is an actual condition that should be recognized as such. However, there is no reason why, with making use of effective ADHD treatment options, that an individual with ADHD cannot reach their full potential as autonomous and effective adults. Adult ADHD and addiction. Adults with ADHD have almost tripled the rate of addiction than that of adults without ADHD. Alcohol and marijuana are the most common substances used. Other types of addictions include nicotine, caffeine, sugar, and street drugs. Some adults use stimulants, such as nicotine and caffeine, pick-me-ups, to help them concentrate and give them mental energy for their daily actions. Others use marijuana or alcohol to calm themselves and relax their busy mind. One of my clients said she smoked marijuana to feel and behave like a normal person. This type of substance use is self-medicating. A Harvard study found of the young adult participants, 70% did not use substances to get high, rather as sleep aid, a mood enhancer, or other comparable reason. This type of self-medication is particularly prevalent in people who do not know they have ADHD or have the diagnosis but aren't treating their ADHD. This is backed up by another study that found people with ADHD who were taking prescribed ADHD medication were far less likely to drink or abuse drugs. Stopping addiction is never easy, but it is possible. If you feel that you are addicted to a substance, don't be ashamed or embarrassed. Those feelings will stop you from getting the help you need. There is nothing to be ashamed about. All you need to do now is treat the problem in a different and healthy way. There is a 4-prong approach, which are outlined below. 1. First, acknowledge that you might have a problem. Tell a very supportive friend, your doctor, or visit your local AA meeting. By telling someone, it brings your secret to the surface and helps you to know that people will still love you regardless. 2. Get help for your ADHD. If you haven't already gotten an official diagnosis, get one. Talk to your doctor about ADHD medication. Join an ADHD support group in your area. Work with an ADHD coach and start to implement the non-pharmaceutical ways to reduce the negative effects of ADHD in your life. 3. Get to the root of the problem. The type of substance will help guide you on what you need in your life. For example, were you taking a stimulant or something to help you relax? If it was the latter, think of other ways you could relax, such as your favorite exercise, meditation, time with your pet, etc. 4. Look at your life. In a fascinating study on rats, Canadian psychologist Bruce Alexander found the environment influenced whether lab rats would choose to consume morphine. When they were in a cramped cage, rat hell, they wanted the morphine. However, even rats who had been given morphine for nearly 60 consecutive days and were then placed in a rat park, rat paradise, they chose plain water, not water laced with morphine. If we transfer the findings to your life, we can see that if you set your life up to be fun and enjoyable for you, you will have less need to use your substance of choice. You may need to do some soul searching to discover what changes you need to make, or you might know the second you read this what you need to do. Remember, don't be judgmental with yourself. Take action and notice the positive results. Brain development of the ADHD person. A study done at the National Institute of Mental Health has used neuroanatomical magnetic resonance image technology to document developmental changes in brain structure in normal children and those with ADHD. It is already known that asymmetrical development is associated with healthy motor and cognitive function. The study images show that children with ADHD lack normal asymmetric development between the right and left brain, with the prefrontal regions losing any asymmetrical development. These findings are consistent with other brain imaging studies on ADHD children that show an inability to utilize prefrontal regulations of the brain, which is known to be associated with focus. This new study shows that the problem is occurring during development. This means changing the problem is best addressed when the brain is developing. A major new aspect in the paradigm of mental health is emerging. Problems with cognitive function and multiple mental health issues involve one or more key areas of the brain simply not able to make functional connections in the proper way. It is likely that brain inflammation is at the source of the problem, which could be coming from multiple sources, including chemicals in food, poor quality food, GMO alterations of food, pollution, stress, environmental instability, immunizations, epigenetic factors, and anything else capable of inducing an inflammatory state of affairs capable of disturbing brain function and inducing wear and tear to brain structure. On the positive side, aerobic exercise is a major rejuvenator of brain structure. Anyone with a child who is at all questionable should keep their child active and spend considerable time on physical activity, hobbies, crafts, and learning any new physical skill. These forms of exercises stimulate new nerve connections to form. Nutrients that help build healthy brain cells help build BDNF and help promote synaptic plasticity are of paramount importance to helping resolve this problem. These nutrients include DHA, pantethine, phosphatidylserine, magnesium, and blueberries. If the ADHD issue, no matter how small or large, can be effectively improved during the developmental years of the brain, then the person will have a more stable brain as an adult. Even so, adults with issues can still make improvement. It will just take longer. This is a far different approach to using speed-like meds to force the brain to focus. These drugs are actually pro-inflammatory to the brain and will have the long-term effect of burning out brain structure, not making connections with structural integrity. What is the difference between ADHD and autism? It is not uncommon to see behavioral changes in a child, especially once they get to around 3 years of age. The challenge for many parents is actually trying to determine which behavioral changes are a normal part of growing up and which ones are not. When a young child suddenly becomes hyperactive and seemingly disinterested in some of the activities which other kids love, parents often worry. Their once well-behaved kid now seems to be unruly most of the time, and it often seems like they are in their own world. Even so, many parents just let it go, especially if they only have one child. However, teachers are usually not as forgiving, and if the child continues to display problematic behavior in class, many teachers will want to discuss the problem with the child's parents. In all honesty, this is actually a good thing because it brings the problem out into the open. One of the leading causes of undesirable behavior in a child is a mental health disorder known as ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Another common cause happens to be autism, although admittedly it is far less common than ADHD. So what is the difference between ADHD and autism? Children with ADHD typically suffer from inattentiveness, hyperactivity, and impulsivity. Some will display all three characteristics, while others may only display one or two. Generally speaking, these kids can't concentrate on the same thing for very long, and they grow restless quickly. Even at the dinner table, an ADHD child will be moving around and fidgeting all the time. Trying to punish an ADHD child for these behaviors will only make matters worse. The only way to correct this sort of behavior is by means of behavioral modification therapy, prescription medication, or perhaps one or more natural remedies. Compared to ADHD, autism is exceedingly more complex. It's far more difficult to diagnose, and it is also far more difficult to treat. Children with autism have great difficulty interacting with other people, including kids the same age. Most also have difficulty trying to learn basic language skills. Also, because of these issues, the vast majority of kids with autism tend to be introverted and have no desire to play with other kids. Having said all that, if you were to ask what is the difference between ADHD and autism, the answer is if your child has ADHD, he or she may very well outgrow the disorder. If your child has autism, they will almost certainly suffer with it throughout their life. What is the difference between ADHD and autism? There are many differences, but in a nutshell, ADHD is far less serious and easily treatable. Autism, on the other hand, is very complex and very difficult to treat. Help your child handle his or her ADHD condition. As parents, accepting the truth that your child has ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, is indeed very painful. Most of the time, parents whose kids have ADHD are clueless with regard to their children's condition until the time they are diagnosed after a few years, usually in their teens. As is often the case, the rowdiness and inattention commonly identified with ADHD are typical indications associated with children's behavior. For this reason, parents are led to believe that in due time their kids would outgrow their tendencies. This may generally be true for other kids, but not for those with ADHD. Although the possibility of enforcing control over their behavior is high once ADHD children are subject to proper treatment, a combination of psychotherapy and prescribed medications, both you and your children are still in great need of support and help when it comes to supervising activities and recording behavioral patterns manifested therein. This is where therapists step into the picture. The valuable assistance they provide does not only aid your child in coping with his condition, but it also guides you in the right way to handle them. All in all, therapists serve as the bridge that reinforces the strong bond between you and your child. When it comes to properly handling your child's rowdy behavior, certain measures must be taken in order to enforce control and encourage change. To acquaint you with the effective means whereby your child can be guided properly, here are the effective methods our therapy used to assist ADHD children in coping with their condition. 1. Psychotherapy. Subjecting your child to psychotherapy would help him understand himself better and, in the process, learn how to love and accept himself despite his condition. Among the valuable learning he would obtain from psychotherapy would be the effective way he can handle and communicate his emotions, especially the painful or negative ones. On the whole, he learns how to cope with and tone down his incongruous emotions and utilize appropriate methods in acquiring proper behavior. 2. Social skills training. When your child undergoes training to develop his social skills, he learns of the significance of having social relationships, as well as the proper way to acquire and keep it. It helps him associate better with other children his age. 3. Behavioral therapy. The main objective of behavioral therapy is to help alter your child's perceptions and replace them with helpful ones. 4. Training for good parental skills. This training is intended to help parents learn the proper techniques to raise their children with ADHD condition. 5. Connecting with support groups. Support groups are intended to foster a supportive relationship between families whose children have ADHD. In joining them, parents gain a better understanding of their child's condition. Also, they obtain emotional and spiritual support through the camaraderie and sense of belonging, which are the main benefits of being in the company of other people in the same plight. 6. Improving communication between parents and their children. The manner whereby parents communicate with their children directly impacts their perception and behavior. Improving communication translates to a stronger and better relationship between parents and their children, which in turn helps the latter cope better with their condition. Home activities for ADHD kids. School is a great way to keep ADHD kids busy, but what about summer breaks and winter? During summer, there is no homework to keep kids occupied, and the hot afternoons can stretch on forever. It's too cold for kids to play outdoors in the winter, which leads to days of whining, complaining, and boredom. But there are plenty of ways to keep kids occupied at home. These tried and tested activities can stimulate the active imaginations of ADHD children and keep them out of trouble when school's out. Bird watching. If you live in an area with lots of greens and wildlife, bird watching is a great way to keep kids occupied. Look at pictures of birds in your area and challenge your child to spot these birds and write down the species they've seen. You can also do bird-related activities, like creating a simple bird feeder. Get a 2-liter plastic bottle and cut out a hole in the center where birds can go in and out. Create 2 smaller holes below the large hole and stick a branch through the center. This will be a place where birds can sit. At the bottle's neck, create 2 small holes and thread nylon string through. Fill the bottle with bird seed and hang it by the string on a tree branch. Grow a garden. Spring and summer is a great time to grow a garden. Even those living in the city can make a small garden on a balcony or fire escape. A garden is not only a great way to get your child outdoors, it will teach him or her how to be responsible. Let your child take care of the garden every day and to list down the changes that happens to the plants. Provide small rewards every time the plant grows a new blossom or bears fruit. Treasure hunting. The treasure hunt game is a fun activity you can do indoors, especially if you have 2 children or more. Using simple treasures from the house or from a dollar store, ask your kids to hide these objects all over the house. Have each child draw a treasure map that leads to each item. Once they're done making their maps, have your kids exchange maps and locate the items they hid. Pen pals. If you have friends or relatives who live in different parts of the country or abroad, see if they have children who are your children's ages. If they do, set up a pen pal network among children so each can learn about how the other lives and the things they do. Dress-up box. Using unwanted clothes or shoes, create a dress-up box that your kids can use for Halloween, school plays, and games that require costumes. You can also scour yard sales and thrift stores for fun items to add to the dress-up box. Playing the drums. To take out all that energy on the drums is a dream for a lot of boys with ADHD. I've seen it over and over again. They love it. They have a knack for it. And even though it is very loud, you may want to consider fulfilling your child's dream and giving him a drum set. Whenever he gets loud, irritated, or just fidgety, the drums are an excellent outlet for energetic outbursts. How is the ADHD brain different? The medical community views attention deficit hyperactivity disorder as a biological condition caused by dysfunctions in the brain, specifically a deficiency in the key neurotransmitters. Although the brain of a person with ADHD is somewhat different from the brain of those without ADHD, these differences are not the only cause of the disorder. ADHD is triggered by many environmental factors, and imbalances found in the ADHD brain are in fact expressions of the real causes of the disorder as well. How is the ADHD brain different from a normal brain? A medical doctor will probably tell you that the ADHD brain is deficient in 2 neurotransmitters, dopamine and neuroepinephrine. These are the chemicals responsible for carrying signals between brain cells. If there aren't enough neurotransmitters, the brain is unable to function optimally, and the person experiences chronic inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity. To treat the imbalance, medical doctors will probably prescribe medication to stimulate the brain's circuits and temporarily increase levels of dopamine, resulting in increased concentration, higher productivity, and better behavior. But the latest research on the brain structure of ADHD children revealed that the difference in the ADHD brain is not so much due to the lack of neurotransmitters, but rather to a problem with the electrical impulses needed to release the neurotransmitters. Alternative healthcare practitioners go beyond the medical explanation of ADHD, a deficiency in neurotransmitters, to locate three major differences in the ADHD brain. All understanding of these three differences is backed up by the latest scientific research. 1. Brain hemisphericity. The normal brain can activate the right and left hemispheres of the brain with ease. However, a person diagnosed with ADHD experiences a deficiency in one of the two hemispheres. Researchers have discovered that the right hemisphere is usually weaker than the left. 2. A developmental delay in brain circuitry. A delay in brain development is usually related to brain hemisphericity. What this means is that a child with ADHD might be 10 years old chronologically, but parts of his brain might be functioning at the level of a 6-year-old, which is why he or she suffers from behavioral problems. These developmental problems are caused by complex environmental factors called antecedents and triggers, which is why the right treatment plan for ADHD should be designed around neutralizing these factors instead of temporarily stimulating the brain with drugs. For as long as antecedents and triggers continue to work on each other, the imbalance in the brain stays and the symptoms will not go away. 3. Problems with sensory integration. Due to brain hemisphericity and developmental delay, an individual with ADHD may have issues processing sensory information. They either feel too much, hyperactive, or don't feel enough, hypoactive. Either way, problems with sensory integration often lead to behavioral problems. Before embarking on a treatment plan for ADHD, your child has to go through tests that can pinpoint any deficiencies in the brain. There are many specialists who can use safe procedures like neurofeedback, sensory integration approaches, or chiropractic neurology to treat any problems in the brain. The best thing about these approaches is that they are 100% natural, which means your child won't be taking any potentially damaging drugs to treat any brain deficiencies that might be found. Remember that ADHD is a condition caused by many environmental factors. An imbalance in neurotransmitters is simply one of the symptoms. That is why an effective treatment for ADHD must go beyond treating the brain and address the environmental factors triggering the disorder in the first place. How to deal with a child who has ADHD. If you have a child that has been diagnosed with or has the symptoms of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD, then you may know how frustrating and challenging this may be. There are some things that you can learn in order to be able to cope with this disorder more effectively, for both you and the child. The first thing that you must do is realize that there is a problem. If you do not realize that problem, then you will not be of any help to your child. Do not keep yourself in denial. You must also learn to have more patience with your child. There are a few things that you can do in order to handle your child better. First of all, children with ADHD are usually more sensitive than other children when it comes to their surroundings. Make sure that you keep your child out of situations where they will be overly stimulated. When they have a lot going on around them, it will only make their behavior harder to deal with. Another thing to do is make sure that you are around your child often. Spending time with your child is one of the best ways to make sure that your child is able to function well in society. You can show them different ways to interact and ways to cope with their disorder. A lot of people turn to medications, which sometimes are necessary. It is important to remember that you do not always have to turn to medication to help your child. There are a variety of ways that you can help your child naturally without the use of prescription drugs. Counseling and other therapeutic remedies can help to lessen the effects of ADHD. You should also see to it that your child gets a lot of physical activity. This is one of the best ways for them to use their energy in a positive way. It will keep them going for longer and allow them to wind down easier at nighttime. You may find that it is hard to get your child to do the things that you tell them to. You should be patient and work with them on this because it is more difficult for them to follow directions than it would be for a normal child to follow them. Watch the things that they intake in their daily diet. You will want to avoid things that are full of sugar and caffeine. This will only make their behavior worse. Take the time to work with your child rather than just get on to them all the time. If you are able to learn more through parenting groups and getting advice from other parents who have dealt with ADHD in the past, you will be better equipped to handle any situations that are brought your way that are related to your child that suffers from ADHD. Just remember, it is something that can be dealt with effectively and should not hinder the life of your child. Learning more about it. There are many childhood conditions that act differently to a child. One such condition is ADHD, or Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. ADHD is another name for ADD, Attention Deficit Disorder, except that ADHD covers a broader spectrum than ADD. There are different types of ADHD, classifications that help to diagnose a child and provide the most accurate treatment. ADHD is a mental disorder that begins in childhood. Once a child has been diagnosed with ADHD, they do not outgrow it, but instead they must learn how to live with it. However, it is important to note that many adults that have ADHD as a child find it manageable as an adult because they are already aware of the condition and its symptoms. Everyone who has a child that acts up sometimes, or if a teacher requests a meeting with a parent to discuss a child's behavior, must wonder what is ADHD. The fact is most children do act up as part of growing up and testing boundaries both at home and at school. So how does a parent know what is ADHD and what is a normal child behavior? What parents should know is that ADHD affects up to 5% of children in school. It is more common for boys to have ADHD than girls. Sometimes the symptoms can subside once puberty is reached. When a child has ADHD, they are not able to concentrate. They move around uncontrollably. Their performance in school is not good. Their behavior is very disruptive in class and at home. If you are wondering what is ADHD symptoms, they are found below. If an infant cannot sleep, cries for no apparent reason, has no set sleeping pattern, may seem difficult to feed, constantly thirsty, hits head on something repeatedly, and throws tantrums, they may have ADHD. If a child displays a short attention span, has increased activity, seems impulsive with their movements, seems fearless, has poor coordination, shows short-term memory, and doesn't have a personality that seems to adjust to surroundings or other people, doesn't have a good self-esteem, doesn't eat well or sleep well, or cannot perform well in school, then that child may suffer from ADHD. When a parent needs to know what ADHD is, it's important that they not only understand what it is and the symptoms that it causes, but they also learn how to live with it. There are many different symptoms of ADHD. However, these symptoms are also symptoms of other conditions that may also need to be ruled out. The child's doctor will perform a series of tests that will help to determine if the child is suffering from ADHD or another condition. Once the child has ADHD, a plan of care will need to be created and followed thoroughly in order to assist the child in learning to deal with the condition. If a child doesn't understand why they feel that way, they may blame themselves and feel even worse. It's important to know that a child can live with ADHD as long as it is recognized and handled with love and understanding. The link between ADHD and substance abuse. ADHD, Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, is a disorder commonly diagnosed among children, and it is a condition that places them at risk of addiction and abuse problems later in life. Studies show that children with ADHD are more likely to develop substance abuse upon adulthood than their non-ADHD peers. Conversely, adult alcoholics are more likely to be diagnosed with ADHD than their non-alcoholic peers. One figure states that people with ADHD are 5 to 10 times more likely to develop alcoholic addiction problems than people without the condition. Other studies found a high association of marijuana use among people with psychological disorders. Among these disorders are OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, ADHD, anxiety, and other more common psychological disorders. With this information in hand, we may ask why it is that ADHD is highly associated with drug and alcohol abuse. Research indicated that individuals with behavioral instabilities, like impulsiveness, tend to gravitate to substance abuse, as their behaviors contribute to the development of substance abuse. Furthermore, alcohol abuse, just like ADHD, is said to have genetic influences, and the two disorders are found to share the similar genetic makeup. Additionally, a child with ADHD who is raised by an alcoholic father has the greatest tendency to develop the same upon adulthood. Stimulant medications like Ritalin, Adderall, and Concerta are commonly prescribed to treat ADHD. Yet these medications are shown to be addictive. Some believe that it is not the condition itself that causes the propensity to substance abuse, but the medications used to treat the condition. These stimulants act on the dopamine in the brain, increasing production to produce attentive behavior. At the same time, dopamine can also affect the emotional area of the brain, increasing pleasure, which is thought to be the addictive component of the medications. Abuse of the stimulant drugs is a problem, not only for the diagnosed with ADHD, but also for those who take the ADHD medications without doctor's prescription. Adderall and Ritalin abuse is common on college campuses, as these drugs are often termed smart drugs, because they help ADHD and non-ADHD students alike in their studies. Using ADHD drugs can lead to dependency, although they are not as addictive as cocaine, which is found to rapidly increase the dopamine levels of the body. The stimulant drugs can produce the same effects if used over a long period of time. ADHD medication should not be used by people with addiction problems. Adults with ADHD and addiction issues are often prescribed non-stimulant medications, such as the antidepressants Wellbutrin or Norepinephrine, or the Adderall alternative Strattera. Myths about ADHD. Here are some of the myths about ADHD and the facts dispelling them. 1. Myth. ADHD kids are simply making excuses instead of taking responsibility for their actions. Truth. ADHD is considered by therapists, physicians, and educators to be a challenge and not a means of making excuses. The medicine taken to treat ADHD is correcting a specific chemical imbalance in the child. These medications allow children with ADHD a chance at a normal life free from the problems associated with ADHD. 2. Myth. ADHD is the result of poor parenting. Truth. A common belief is that children who suffer from ADHD are merely undisciplined little brats whose parents are unable or unwilling to properly discipline them. Tests have shown that simply providing more discipline or discipline of a stricter nature does nothing to help the disorder. In fact, studies show it makes the situation worse. 3. Myth. Ritalin is an unsafe drug to give to children. Truth. Research studies have consistently proven that children and adults who are prescribed Ritalin to treat ADHD benefit from the treatment with astounding results. Ritalin has been used safely for over 50 years in the treatment of ADHD, with no serious long-term side effects. To say there are no side effects would be untrue, however. No one has ever died due to taking Ritalin, and that includes overdosing on the drug. Ritalin does not alter growth, nor do children who are eventually taken off of Ritalin show any long-term or permanent side effects. 4. Myth. ADHD is not a real disorder. Truth. ADHD, or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, is a neurobiological disorder that has been recognized by the courts, the United States Department of Education, the United States Congress, the NIH, National Institutes of Health, in all major medical professions, including medical doctors, psychiatric doctors, and educational associations. 5. Myth. Ritalin is like giving cocaine to a child. Truth. While Ritalin is a stimulant called methylphenidate, it is a prescribed medication that is different chemically from the illegal narcotic cocaine. The medical use and prescription of Ritalin does not cause addiction and dependence on the drug. It also does not create a psychosis in the patient. 6. Myth. A person can outgrow ADHD over time. Truth. Children are not the only sufferers of ADHD, and it's being found more and more in adults. About 15 to 50% of children diagnosed with ADHD may have the disorder for the rest of their lives. Through proper diagnosis and treatment, people who suffer from ADHD are able to live a relatively normal, happy, and productive life. The myths surrounding this disorder are par for the course. There will always be someone who challenges a disorder that is of an emotional nature. Speak to your child's doctor and ask for more information about the disorder to educate yourself. Having the information from a professional will help you to better understand the disorder and dispel myths you may come across. Non-medical treatment for ADHD. Doing a search for ADHD treatment, you will find the majority of treatment options are non-medical. There are very few medical professionals that are practicing a non-drug approach to ADHD. The most popular treatment method is medication that can only be prescribed by a medical professional. There are a number of non-medical treatment options for ADHD that work at varying degrees of success. Unfortunately, without proper medical treatment, then the disorder is still present in the child or adult. Only the symptoms have been reduced because of behavioral management techniques. The use of learning tools or supportive therapies that help calm the patient. Some new medical treatment for ADHD can include aspects of the following options. Tutor. Getting a personal tutor is normally the first step in helping a child with ADHD. They are not getting the attention required in the classroom, so they become dependent on family members to help them complete homework assignments and other tasks required by the teacher. Many parents find that they spend many hours an evening teaching the child the material given out at school that day. Since most parents are working, they turn towards private or professional tutor companies to help their child overcome their ADHD symptoms. Learning centers. In most communities and in some public libraries, there are services to help children to help learn in a learning environment that is more interactive and personal to their needs. At learning centers, which are normally for-profit ventures, they will have greater access to learning through computers and in ways not normally found in a standard public classroom. This sort of environment should keep an ADHD child's attention for longer, allowing them to learn and improve. This does not solve the underlying causes of ADHD, but it does provide them with the help they need to succeed. Biofeedback. This is one of the few non-medical treatment options for ADHD that has a real future. Training using biofeedback has been proven across almost every industry, from professional sports athletes looking to improve their game to scientists who need to keep going in high-stress environments. Biofeedback has many years of use and is now being adopted by more and more medical professionals. Non-drug medical biofeedback treatment for ADHD has been in use since about 1992 in Southern California. Concentration, focus training, and therapy. There are also many consultants and therapists offering counseling and offer techniques for improving concentration in young people. These are not as popular as the changes that occur in the patient, take a long time, and are not quantitative. Since there is less quantitative positive reinforcement, this type of non-medical treatment for ADHD has a higher degree of relapse as the younger children move off into college. Away from parents and other adult oversight, the techniques used to improve their focus and concentration goes into disuse. Supplements. Since diet is a large part of our world and are not considered a medical treatment, vitamins and mineral supplements are very popular in many communities. In some cases, depending on the severity of the ADHD symptoms, parents opt to try this first. Changing the diet can have an immediate effect. Giving the body more of the things it needs, it will function better overall, but it may not have any effect on the brain waves that are causing the ADHD in the first place. The person suffering from ADHD may feel much better, thus increasing their ability to manage their ADHD symptoms and the urges that come with them. The person still has ADHD and will need to stay vigilant. Exercise. A child suffering from ADHD with extreme hyperactivity needs an outlet for it. Regular exercise throughout the day will help calm a hyperactive child as well. Expending that extra energy is healthy for everyone, not just those suffering with ADHD. Can people with ADHD become successful entrepreneurs? Most people think of a diagnosis of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, as having a negative impact on the lives of those diagnosed with the disorder. While that sentiment is certainly true, there are people who are diagnosed with ADHD who also display characteristics that have a positive influence in every area of their lives, including in their family, their social circle, and their career. What may surprise many people is that studies show 1/3 of all adults with ADHD become entrepreneurs. Due to their high level of energy, ability to think quickly, and to multitask throughout the day, certain ADHD individuals are often able to start a business with good success. Moreover, their strong stamina allows them to work the long hours often required. People with ADHD are often restless, and their tendency toward impulsive behavior drives them to new adventures. These traits aid their ability when developing a new company. However, they should then place appropriate team members in management positions for stability in the end. The ADHD employer can easily become distracted from routine tasks, making impulsive decisions, and tend towards a public display of hyperactivity. Their physical restlessness can become a distraction to those around them, interfering in meetings with staff or other business owners. Bringing in a partner or upper-level manager with good business management skills greatly adds to their ability to create a successful enterprise. Moreover, adding staff members who are able to remain focused on their tasks can assist the budding entrepreneur with his or her organizational skills. They should also utilize the services of a career coach who will help them find their business strengths and weaknesses. Choosing a solid team will help them achieve success. Another option for the ADHD entrepreneur is to create a vibrant new business, then sell and use the proceeds to create a new company. This would satisfy their desire to try new opportunities and allow them to move on to new adventures when they lose interest in the old. Utilizing a team of managers and staff who can pick up the slack when the entrepreneur is unable to concentrate will still allow a company to remain viable in the business community. All good entrepreneurs surround themselves with strong management and workers. The ADHD entrepreneur must choose carefully whom he or she includes in the business, but they should not allow their ADHD diagnosis to stop them from moving forward. The differences between ADHD and ADD. ADHD is different with ADD. ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, has two main symptoms, hyperactivity and impulsive, while the main symptom of ADD, attention deficit disorder, is the inability to focus without hyperactivity. Children with ADHD can be classified into three groups: hyperactivity and act impulsively, focusing attention disorder, attention deficit disorder, and the concentration of attention and hyperactivity disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Many parents do not feel worried if their children, who were aged under 5 years old, are very active and pressed, although sometimes exhausting and cause resentment. But that was the act of a healthy toddler. Toddlers seem very active because they're actively exploring the surrounding environment. Touching, holding, kissing, and even ate anything that caught his attention is part of the process that they should follow in their life cycle. If the activity is outside of the fairness boundaries and cannot be controlled, the child may be suffered attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. ADHD symptoms, as listed in the Diagnostics and Statistics Manual of Mental Disorders, consists of three main symptoms. 1. Children have lack of attention or do not listen. Consist of A. Children failed to listen for detailed. B. Children have some difficulties persist in one activity. C. Children do not listen when other people speak to them. D. Children often do not follow instructions. E. Children have some difficulties to arrange the schedule of tasks and activities. F. Children often shy away from tasks that require long attention. G. Children often lose things necessary for tasks. H. Children are frequent switched of attention by the outside stimulus. I. Children become forgetful in daily activities. 2. Children have impulsivity or impatience, motor, verbal, or cognitive impulsivity, comprising A. Children often answer before questions completed. B. Children often have difficulty awaiting turn. C. Children frequent cutting or interrupting. D. Reckless, dangerous act without thinking. E. Children often yelling in class. F. Impatient. G. Nosy, like disturbing the other children. H. The request must be fulfilled. I. Easily frustrated and desperate. 3. Children often moving as if governed by the driving force, hyperactivity or cannot be silent, comprising A. Children often moving their hands and feet and often writhing. B. Children often leave. C. Children often talk excessively. The characteristics of attention deficit disorder, ADD, among others. A. Children are distracted by external stimuli easily. B. Children hard to hear and obey orders. C. Children hard to concentrate. With the other disorders, approximately 50% of children with ADHD were also followed by other psychiatric disorders, such as dyslexia, difficulty reading, delays in speech, weakness in mathematical ability, disturbances, tics, movements of the body part repeatedly, oppositional disorder, behavioral refuse, and conduct disorder, antisocial behavior, aggressive. The positive qualities of ADHD. Life with ADHD is a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week adventure. If you or someone you love has been diagnosed with ADHD, then you know how challenging it can be at times. Unfortunately, most of our focus is on the negative aspects and problems of ADHD, and rarely are the strengths and positive qualities of ADHD appreciated or celebrated. These amazing attributes are the other side of the coin, so to speak. These are the assets, personal talents, strengths, geniuses of ADHD that enrich our world. They include such attributes as out-of-the-box thinking, creativity, innovative thinking, humor, musically intuitive, perseverance, adventurous, intelligent, charming, great problem solver, willing to take risks, curiosity, imaginative, tenacious, resilient, unique, just to name a few. Here are some positive attributes of ADHD. Innovative thinking. The most successful people are those who are good at Plan B. James York. Innovative, according to the dictionary, means using or showing new methods or ideas. People with ADHD are definitely innovative. Adventurous spirit. Man cannot discover new oceans unless he has the courage to lose sight of the shore. Andre Gide. In general, adventurers are in their element when they are discovering something new or experiencing something different. I am not surprised that adventurous people, such as Columbus, Lewis and Clark, and other explorers are now thought to have had an ADHD brain style. Who else but a person with ADHD would embark on an adventure where the end result is uncertain, perhaps even dangerous? The risk of death was high and each day unpredictable, with possibilities of falling off the edge of the world, encountering strange beasts, and never returning to your homeland and loved ones. People with this awesome quality of adventurous spirit know that with great risk comes great reward, and people with ADHD are almost always at the front of the line when it comes to seeing adventure as a great opportunity, when it might leave others dead in their tracks. Intelligence. There are painters who transform the sun to a yellow spot, but there are others who, with the help of their art and their intelligence, transform a yellow spot into the sun. Pablo Picasso. A third favorite positive ADHD quality of mine is intelligence. Statistically, most people with ADHD have a higher than average IQ. Unfortunately, this innate intelligence does not always perform well on standardized tests or in the current academic structures, so this intelligence is overlooked or missed entirely. The difference is that the intelligence of a person with ADHD often cannot be measured by their GPA, standardized test scores, whether they turn their homework in, or their academic standing. Rather, persons with ADHD show their intelligence in such areas as an aptitude in math, English, writing, sports, computers, performing or visual arts, nature, etc. Creative and productive thinking that generate new ideas and solutions and inventions. Having a great sense of humor because they often see connections to ideas or concepts others miss. The ability to become submerged, hyper-focused on a task that is innately interesting to them. An innate sense of curiosity. It's important to remember to include these other areas of intelligence when judging the potential of people with ADHD. Everyone's brain and ADHD are a bit different. We all have gifts and talents. With ADHD, they might just look different, and that is not a bad thing. When we can appreciate these awesome ADHD qualities in ourselves and appreciate and honor these strengths in others, that are happiness. Treatment of ADHD, the safer options. There are indeed a lot of options in the treatment of ADHD. However, it is very important to select a proper option, or else you will end up suffering more than benefiting. There are a number of alternative ways in which ADHD can be treated. These remedies are natural, harmless, and prove to be very effective. So take a look at a few of them and choose the one that you feel suits you best. 1. Proper lifestyle. Maintaining a proper lifestyle can go a long way in the treatment of ADHD. If you control the intake of excess salts, sugars, starch, and caffeine, you can curb the symptoms of ADHD to a great extent. Also, if you sleep well and for sufficient amounts of time, check the amount of alcohol consumption, and exercise regularly, you will be able to be better equipped to fight ADHD. 2. Herbal remedy. There are some very effective herbs that cure ADHD completely. Herbs such as Brahmi, German chamomile, St. John's wort, and tuberculinum have been used in the treatment of ADHD for a long time, even before the prescription drugs were invented. So if you want a completely natural as well as refreshing ADHD treatment, you could go for the herbal remedies. 3. Homeopathy. Considered to be one of the most effective natural treatments of ADHD, homeopathy is indeed a wonderful solution. Time-tested and scientifically proven, the homeopathy medicines are gentle and treat ADHD without causing any harm to your body. Did you know that the chemical drugs used to cure ADHD are really dangerous? They cause a lot of harm by bringing along some awful side effects, like nausea, hypertension, and loss of appetite. Patients often get addicted to the drugs, which prove to be a further problem. As a result, a lot of people are now embracing homeopathy, which is 100% free of side effects. The homeopathic medicines take a longer time to cure the disorder, but this happens only because these medicines work from the deepest levels and erase the disorder completely, unlike the prescription drugs which combat only the symptoms.